Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. It's good to be with you again. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tim Andersen, the Appraiser's Advocate, and this morning we have a super guest here on Movers and Shakers, Mr. Blaine Feyen. Blaine, how are you this morning?
Doing great, Tim. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to be here. I know you're busy. I know that you're the chief evangelist for True Footage, and you got a whole lot of people you've got to keep motivated. So thank you for your time. And in advance, thank you for your expertise.
Yeah,
So
thank you. Thanks for asking. The pleasure's mine. Honored to be here.
sure, that's no problem at all. And we're, again, just so everybody knows, we don't script these things, but I have asked in advance some questions of Blaine. So we might get to those. We might talk about other stuff. But the point is, Blaine's here because of his wisdom, basically. And I've asked him to share it. So, Blaine, if we could get started. We're recording this toward the end of June, 2023, and you had put up a blog on LinkedIn about value, and we're not talking market value. We're not talking, how much an appraiser should earn per appraisal. We're talking about value in the sense of what Warren Buffett said: "No, price is what you pay, but value is what you get."
Right.
So we're in a situation currently where appraisers, I guess the best way to put it, are under assault. There are those appraisers who believe that Fannie Mae is trying to, the GSEs, I should say, excuse me, are trying to kick us out of the appraisal business. There are our political critics in Washington who are, it looks like they're doing their best to try to get appraisers out of the mortgage loan continuum.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about value. Let's talk about it both in the positive sense and in the negative sense. What is the value that appraisers can and should be adding? And what is the value that appraisers are not yet adding?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as you know, I mean, our friendship goes back many years. I had you as a guest in our coaching program. Still one of the most watched video trainings was when we had you on. And I've been talking about and kind of preaching and coaching on value for probably close to 20 years now in my coaching programs. And it's because the idea of value creation and adding value is built into the DNA of every business, meaning value is in the eye of the beholder. Value is in the eye of the buyer. Value is in the belly of the person eating at a restaurant. And so it behooves any person in business to always be checking in with those they serve on what they perceive is of the highest value. And I think one of the issues we have in the appraisal industry, and I talk about this in the podcast all the time as well, is that nobody's really asking the client or the customer what they value. Appraisers tend to go about things just assuming that the value comes from their training, from how they look at deals, from their analytical skills, which of course are valuable skills, but we don't want to equivocate on this word value when we're talking about what's the value to the end user, to the client. And I think there's tremendous value gleaned by asking them what's valuable to them. And we kind of see in the market, you just mentioned it, all the things that are going on in the market is basically the market telling us what they value. And sometimes there's value diminishment. Sometimes there's things we think are valuable, and the clients are basically telling us, yeah, no, that's not valuable to us. We don't really care. I say it all the time. A lot of times the client doesn't care about the letters after your name. The client doesn't care about, having a 100-page report. They care about maybe a turn time, or they care about other things, workflow compliance and revision rates and other things. So I think the first step is it really behooves appraisers to wrap their heads around the fact that they are serving a particular client and a client base, whether that's in the non-lending world or the lending world. And, one of the imperatives in business is simply starting to ask the questions: what is valuable to my clients and customers? Then you're in a position to answer, do I have the capability or the willingness to deliver on that value. So I think that's the greatest value would be just in asking the question, what do they value the most? And do I have the capability and the willingness to step up to what they deem to be valuable?
Okay. Now, staying on the concept of value, you've spent much of your life in the martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the level you are in the martial arts, it's just not about breaking boards. It's basically about training your soul.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk a little bit about appraiser's training. Now, it's basic. It's possible in some states, not all, but in some states, it's possible to become an apprentice appraiser with literally 75 hours of classroom training, of which 15 hours is the USPAP class. So, literally you're talking about 60 hours in the classroom, which is a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So you're becoming an appraiser in a week and a half. Now, I've read many of the articles you've written about your training in the martial arts. Again, once you've trained yourself physically, then the spiritual training comes in. And this is where you and those who have achieved high level stand out, because you don't walk down the street going, I can kick anybody's butt that I see. Mm-hmm. Your training is, I don't want to. I have no need to. But if I need to defend myself, I can. Mm-hmm. Now, let's transfer this to appraisers.
Yeah.
Are appraisers getting I don't want to say the mental training. I want to say, are appraisers taking their training and their experience to heart? And by so doing, working on becoming better appraisers in the sense of what you just talked about, in the sense of the value they offer to their clients and the value they offer, even more importantly, to the public whose trust we are supposed to seek and foment.
Yeah. Again, another great question. And I think it does, as you just pointed out, a lot of it does begin at the training phase. And by the way, although I think it's getting worse in terms of a reduction of qualifications or time required, this has been a dilemma for decades, in that almost all of the focus on the training has been technical. I make a case, words matter. And there's a difference between being a supervisor and being a mentor. Those two words carry vastly different meanings. And it seems the word supervisor is being preferred much more over mentor, where I prefer the term mentor, because mentor means more than just technical. To go back to the martial arts, sensei, the term sensei essentially means firstborn, or one who has come before, and not just in the technical sense. I was very lucky in the martial arts, having lived in a Zen monastery and studied Aikido while living literally in the dojo and traveling with this true master and mentor, that it wasn't just about, in fact, very little of it was about the technical acumen or expertise. It was more about the emotional intelligence, your spiritual understanding, your growth as a human being, and how you interacted with other human beings. The technical was going to come no matter what. You put in the time, you're going to get the technical. But the technical was just the beginning. And again, to relate it to martial arts, the understanding that was imparted to me, most martial arts, regardless of the actual art, whether it's a Korean art, a Japanese art, a Israeli art, or whatever it is, there's usually some type of ranking system, whether it's belts or sashes or colors or whatever. And the significance of those is from, say, white belt to black belt in most martial arts. The misunderstanding or the myth is that once you attain a black belt, you've mastered the art, and that is not what happens. When you attain a black belt, the significance is supposed to be that you have a basic understanding, potentially have mastered the basics, and that's it. And that the real work begins at black belt, and the real work is the work on yourself, essentially, that spiritual growth, that emotional intelligence, and developing that, and crossing over into that phase that you just mentioned. Not needing to use it, not needing to have your ego out front all the time, showing that you're a martial artist or a black belt. And I think it's the same in business. To tie this back to the first question about value, I think our value as appraisers' real value is in the emotional intelligence side of things. When we can connect with the human beings on the other side of the transaction, we can connect with our lenders, our realtor partners, our title partners, and all the people in the transactions. And we can show that we have some understanding and some empathy of everybody's part and everybody's role. And I think that's been left out of the training for a long, long time in the appraisal industry. And I think the dilemma is only growing as we're cutting the technical hours, because it's perpetuating the myth even further that all you need are the technical hours. And so we have a lot of appraisers out there that their value is rooted in how technically savvy they think themselves to be, when in my opinion, their real value is in how they relate to the world and how they can bring that other definition of value to their clients.
Let's go back to the word sensei.
Mm-hmm.
And please forgive my execrable Japanese, but one who follows the sensei, is the word kohai?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Senpai
okay.
and kohai.
Okay. All right. So let us say that an appraiser finds a sensei, a mentor, not just a boss, but one who knows the path,
Mm-hmm.
and is willing to walk down that path. Now, that puts the sensei in a leadership position.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is break this down into the sensei and the kohai function.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you please give us, in your opinion, what one must have, what one must do to qualify as a sensei, to qualify as a mentor?
Yeah. In the appraisal industry specifically, obviously you have to have that technical understanding and expertise. That's the baseline. But I want to be careful, because I don't want to suggest that somebody may have arrived at a certain place and that their training stops. Meaning, I've trained or mentored or been the sensei for 22 appraisers over a 21-year career, trainees, apprentices, and whatnot. And I always looked at my role as the sensei, as the mentor. And so they were taught not only the technical aspects of appraising, but of course they were taught wealth building, how to save their money, how to invest, how to build a business, all these different things that I felt it was my responsibility to teach them so that they could be independent if they ever chose to be, or choose to continue following if they felt that was reasonable to do. But what it did for me, even on the first apprentice that I ever had, was it highlighted the importance of my own growth, continued growth, or what the Japanese would call kaizen, continuous improvement for the good. And so over 22 trainees over a 21-year period, my growth has been exponential. It's been one of the benefits of being a true mentor, is you realize that the growth doesn't stop. And for me to continuously be able to add value to them, I had to continuously grow and learn more and be more and do more and help more and serve more. So I think the role of a true sensei, of a true mentor in this industry, if I could make a plea to anybody considering doing it, it would be to be able to impart. And I know, by the way, there are some who vehemently disagree with me on this. They say, nope, my job is just supervisor, give them the technical skills. To which I would say, to take that tack is to simply say goodbye 2 years in advance. The trainee has no option, no growth options, but to say, I have to go out on my own within 2 years because there's no growth here. If you want people to stick around and you want people to follow and you want to grow as an organization, taking the mentorship or the sensei role, which means looking at all the areas you can help this individual become who they're supposed to be, not just as an appraiser, but as a person. I think that's one of the biggest roles that a mentor could play in the industry.
Okay, Blaine, thank you. Now let's look at it from the kohai standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Again, correct my Japanese when I mess it up.
Perfect.
The Okay, there is a saying, when the student is prepared, the teacher will come.
Mhm.
Okay, but it says when the student is prepared. It doesn't say when the student's ready. It says when the student is prepared. So therefore, in order to benefit from a sensei, in order to benefit from the sensei's concept of Kaizen, what does the Kohai need to bring to the picture?
Yeah, another great question. To be a good kohai in martial arts literally just means one who's following in the footsteps, essentially. And that is more or less, in my opinion, ego submission, where you kind of put your ego aside and you recognize this person is imparting. It's like a parent. You're a parent. I'm a parent. We take pieces of ourselves and we put them into our children. They're literally taking part of us, our energy, our spirit, our past experiences, and we, like puzzle pieces, we're putting them to our kids. And anybody who's willing to take that mentorship role, take on a kohai, so to speak, has to recognize that and treat it with kid gloves, because it's a massive responsibility. It's a big opportunity, but it's a massive responsibility. And the kohai, the student, I prefer the word protege, because mentor and protege are kind of two ends of the spectrum. A mentor is somebody who says, I'm going to take this big puzzle piece out of the center of me, and I'm going to place it into you. I'm going to deplete some of me to make you that much better. And the protege has to, one, be worthy of it, two, accepting of it, and three, be willing to take that without ego, and then potentially carry that on. We would call that legacy. Continue to spread that to others.
Okay, the legacy spreading to others, the Kaizen.
Yep.
Right. Now, let's go back to the mentor, to the sensei. Is it not true that one of the attributes of a sensei is that he or she realizes that while he or she knows a whole bunch of stuff, they also realize there's a whole bunch of stuff they don't know and they have to keep learning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two aspects to this. My teacher, my Aikido and Zen teacher, Mr. Toyota, passed away in 2001, but he was a world-renowned Zen master and Aikido teacher. And of course, when you come to study, you kind of give up your life to be accepted into this live-in student program, and you submit and subjugate your ego completely. You say, okay, I'm yours, do with me what you will, to get that kind of training. And so, of course, with that comes some a little bit of a pedestal placing, if you will. You look up to this person. And one of the most profound moments that I had in that career, that life, was while I was sitting in his office. There were only three of us live-in students, could be only four at a time. Three of us were sitting in his office, and these were like wisdom sessions. He would smoke a cigar and he would impart his wisdom to us. And one of the things he said, which really kind of shattered me in the moment, but it was necessary, was for him to say, my job is to make you better than I am. Which, when you're looking up to somebody, you've placed them on a pedestal, you think, well, as good as I'll ever be, I'll probably only ever be a fraction of what this person is. But that's when I knew that he was a true sensei, and I was honored to be the protege, because he said, my highest calling when I have these students is to make them better than I am. And with that came this idea of Kaizen, that I'm going to make it as tough as possible on you to try to exceed me, which means I have to continue growing so that I have always some value to offer you. But at the end of the day, my ultimate goal, the greatest gift you could give to me, would be to exceed me in all of these areas. And what that did to us as the live-in students was it ignited us in a whole new way, where we thought, wow, this is a huge responsibility. And he just showed us who he was as a person. And I've taken that into kind of every mentor protege relationship that I've had, whether it be on the Aikido mat or in the appraisal world, that the greatest honor is to have an appraiser that I've trained or brought to a certain level then continue to grow beyond me. And I have had the great honor and pleasure of seeing that. I'm still friends with all the people I've trained. One of my dear friends who I trained passed away several years ago, but all of the others are still either with me or operating their own businesses. And I've had many opportunities to review their reports and see what they do in business. I can thankfully say that many of them in many ways have exceeded me in other areas. So I think part of the role of that Kohai or that protege is to carefully select and then ultimately respect what the protege is giving you.
Let's talk about the paradox of Zen for a minute. As I understand Zen, it is the attempt to completely exclude the world, focus on yourself for introspective purposes. But in doing so, in focusing on yourself, you therefore learn empathy, and you therefore learn to embrace others. Is that correct?
What I will say, Tim, is that, and I am by no means a spokesperson for Zen or any of those. Zen literally just means meditation. It comes from the Chinese word Chan, and the lineage or the practice of Zen, Rinzai Zen, that I studied was really kind of like a warrior monk style, very militaristic style of seated meditation along with some esoteric practices. But what I've carried on into my daily life, seated meditation, the actual goal, if you can say there is one, and Zen people hate that, by the way, saying that there's a goal. They would prefer that say there is no goal. The goal is to have no goal and to just sit in meditation. However, in today's terms, and for people to grasp it and have some understanding, the goal is not to escape from the world or to shut out the world. It's actually the opposite. It is to drop fully into the present moment, the present reality. One of the examples that I was given while I was living in the Zen monastery, our Zendo, as it's called, it's the area, the wooden floor and room and hall that you sit in every single morning while you're doing zazen or seated meditation. The Zendo or this monastery was a layperson's monastery, a daily monastery in the heart of Chicago, in a busy part of Chicago. And so the windows would be opened out to the street, busy street in Chicago. And so 24 hours a day, all you heard were cars honking and sirens and people walking and partying and all that kind of thing. And so when the first several months of doing it, I would sit there in seated meditation. I would be thinking to myself, well, this is so distracting. Why don't they close these windows? Isn't this supposed to be peaceful? And I brought it up to my sensei at the time. And he said, no, it's exactly the point. You should be able to drop into this state of Zen in any environment, in the most chaotic environment, because the point is to be able to control your ego and yourself and your mind, essentially, in any environment. Like, what would the purpose be if you always had to have every situation peaceful? And again, atomic bomb in my brain, like, of course. And so from that day forward, I always sought out more chaotic environments to do meditation in, because you found that if you, not only would you be able to kind of put guardrails around the chaos, time would slow down and you could kind of see the chaos for what it really was. And the goal of that practice was to never get attached to any of the chaos. Don't get attached to your emotions. Don't be pulled in this direction or this direction, whether that be anger or excitement or whatever. Just stay steady, observe them, the emotions, observe the thoughts, observe the ideas, put a parenthesis around it and let it continue on by. And it's been probably one of the most helpful growth practices that I encountered. I was only 20 years old when I moved into that monastery. I'm 52 now. So been meditating now for 32 years, and probably one of the greatest practices and life lessons that I've been able to carry into every business, every coaching experience, everything I've done, sports, because it really is just about calming the mind, but dropping into the present moment, not trying to cut out things, but be fully present, if that makes sense.
No, it makes excellent sense. Now, the discussion we've had so far basically was to set the stage for this question. What does the appraiser have to do? And I mean, you use the term Zendo, meaning where you are.
Mhm.
All right. What does the appraiser have to do? And I mean both practical and maybe even impractical. What does the appraiser have to do to enter that Zendo, to enter that state of Zen, so that he or she comes to understand that appraising is not merely the agglomeration of facts on a page, but it is the ability to bring together trends, facts, analyses, and from those, listening to what they say, synthesize an opinion of value, which is the whole reason we get hired in the first place. You know,
Mhm.
all somebody wants us to say is, I'm $1 million. Okay. But that's easy. The hard part is coming up with the $1 million.
Mhm.
So as a result, what does the appraiser have to do to, and I'm going to say isolate, and that's probably the wrong word, but isolate him or herself in that Zendo so they
Yeah.
can take everything that they have to take, and most of which, as you indicated, is superfluous, and turn it in to that, to synthesize it into that final value opinion.
Yeah, I would say, Timothy, great introspective question. I would say two primary things. And to tie it back to Zen, one of them being ego subjugation. And I find this a problem in every industry, by the way. Everybody I coach, and it is exponential with the more years somebody has in an industry. Doesn't matter if you're in IT or if you're in the restaurant biz or you're an appraiser. As people gain experience, they tend to believe their own BS, and they tend to believe that maybe growth is over. So ego subjugation, which again we learn in Zen, constantly giving up your ego and going, I'm a baby. Essentially, there's a Japanese word, Shoshin, which is beginner's mind, always having the mind of a beginner, even as an expert. Remember, we said when you're a black belt, you essentially just have mastered the basics, and now the real work begins. It's constantly adopting that mindset of Shoshin. I am a beginner. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm a beginner. Because what was I like when I was a beginner? I was hungry for information, and I was my eyes were wide open because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I could take in everything. I was a sponge for information, and I think that sponge gets full over the years, and it's different for everybody. Maybe it happens at year 5. I mean, we have a joke in the coaching industry that somebody who says they've been doing something for 20 years usually means they repeated years 2 and 3 17 or 18 times. They haven't necessarily grown, they're just repeating, they stopped growing. So ego subjugation is probably one of the most important. And then to tie it again back to Zen, there's a practice in not all Zen practices, but there's a practice in the Zen lineage that I was brought up in called koan training, Koan. Koan training is our what we might refer to as illogical questions that have no answer. The most famous of those, probably most people have heard of, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And so at some stage or phase of your Zen training, you will be given by the Zen master a koan to work on. And there's a whole series and levels of these koans. And there is a purpose behind them, and is to push through logic to the space and area of your mind and your heart and your soul that exceeds logic. And so you have to you work on it in your meditation. What is the sound of one hand clapping? What is the sound? And you realize there is no logical answer to what is the sound of one hand clapping. There's another saying, when you meet the Buddha on the road, be sure to kill him. So there's no logical answer to these things. It's just gives you things to work on. What you realize when you come out of it is the value of questions, which is closely tied to ego subjugation. If your ego is too big, you stop asking the right questions. Some people stop asking questions altogether. So I think the dropping into reality, the training Zendo for appraisers is to never lose, or to be said another way, to never have it such a big ego that you know everything, and then to tie that to the quality of your questions. I find myself now 22 years into the appraisal business, quite often going through an appraisal report and having to go back to that Shoshin or beginner's mind where I say to myself, what am I missing? What haven't I thought of? Where could I look for more? Even though it may appear that I have everything here, I always try to step back and go, what is your ego keeping you from knowing? It's also a coaching question I often ask. What are you pretending not to know? Because it kind of pierces through logic, and then you can sit back and you can see things differently. And I can tell you it's helped me more times than not, where I just stare and I ask questions. What am I missing? What am I missing? And then it leads to new questions. And then all of a sudden, something appears or appears to appear that answers that question. This is what you were missing. And this was the missing piece that makes this report that much more credible and infinitely more reliable.
So in talking, thank you. In talking about reliability and credibility, you're saying that obviously practical training makes that's a significant part of that, but yet contemplating the sound of one hand clapping, which of course makes no sense, but you're trying to pass through that. So yes, you have to look for the logical answers. Yes, you have to apply reasoning. Excuse me. Yes, you have to apply logic. But once you've applied the reason and the logic, those already existed. You know, the sale already existed. The rental already existed. The cost already existed. But now you've got to break through the logic and go to and come up, literally synthesize something that never existed before, which is your opinion of value. So as a result, what does the appraiser, I'm going to say need to do, and I'm probably limiting the question by using the verb to do, but what does an appraiser need to do to be able to break through the logic to synthesize an answer?
Yeah, again, great question. And obviously, as we know, every scenario is different, which is, I think, where the value of questions comes in. Some of the most dangerous scenarios, I think, are the ones that appear to be all put together. The cookie cutter house in the development where all the comps are lined up perfectly and everything looks good. Some of those, in my experience, are some of the most dangerous because we tend to put introspection to the wayside. Oh, good, I got an easy one. It's all here. It's pretty obvious. And we forget to ask the question. So again, I think I would go back to either developing the skill or retaining the skill coupled with ego subjugation of being open-minded and willing to ask questions. And then the synthesizing of an opinion. By the way, if we just to touch on a technical aspect, this is maybe philosophical, but a technical aspect that I think is one of the downfalls of at least the Fannie Mae forms is the single point value that's on the Fannie Mae 1004 form, the 1073, and all of these forms, because it has led appraisers to believe that they are so good and it is so scientific at what they do that they can come up with a single point value. But that is antithetical to the way the real estate market works. Real estate markets, stock markets, all of those are emotional markets. And although we use technical tools to figure, price to earnings and what should something be selling for in the market as measured against something else, principle of substitution, the reality is there's always a range of values. So that would be one tip I would say, one thing I would say for appraiser egos is to always recognize we're not that good. We might be able to get close, but there's always a window or a range of values that we're ultimately opining within. It's when we put that single point value down at the bottom of page 2 that our egos tend to become inflated. And then we become ego invested in defending that single point value. So I don't know if I can adequately answer the synthesizing of an opinion other than to say, I think it's definitely rooted in our egos, asking enough of and the right questions, and then being open to seeing the full picture. and recognizing that it, at the end of the day, is just that. It's our opinion based on the analysis that we're giving to the data that's available to us.
Blaine, thank you. If an appraiser wanted to get in touch with you and continue this discussion or perhaps consult with you, how would an appraiser do that?
Yeah, coachblaine.com, easy to remember. My website, there's a bunch of information there. I've been doing a podcast every week now for 6.5 years called the Real Value Podcast. You can listen to that on Spotify or on our website, coachblaine.com/blog. All of the podcast episodes are there, both in written form as well as the audio form. But yeah, just reach out to me there, coachblaine.com. You can email me from there. People can text me. They friend me on Facebook and reach out to me there. I'm always doing free coaching calls. People can reach out. I'll jump on a Zoom call like this and help people through problems. We don't charge for that. It's part of my continued Kaizen, my continued growth and training.
And then Blaine, I know that you do public speaking. Are you going to be at any conventions or meetings this year?
Yeah, I will be at Val Expo. I'll also be at the summit. I won't be teaching or speaking this year. Their docket was full, and so I won't be teaching, but I will be roaming the halls, so to speak, and having meetings and available for drinks and cigars and discussions about these topics.
Okay, thank you. And again, please excuse my execrable Japanese, but sensei, domo arigato.
Hai, do itashimashita.
Thank you. All right. I appreciate it, Blaine. And this has been an honor to be with you. I'm sure that those who watch this are going to get a lot out of it and start asking themselves a lot of introspective questions on their way to becoming better appraisers. So again, Blaine, thank you to everyone who has watched. Domo arigato is thank you in my execrable Japanese. And Blaine said you're welcome in his very good Japanese. And look forward to the next time we get together. And Blaine, I'll be at the summit, and I look forward to shaking your hand.
As do I, my friend. The honor's been all mine. Thanks again for having me. It's really been an honor.
Thank you. It has been an honor to me. So thanks, everybody. Be safe and well. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.